Now, when
Yeah.
you guys used to race the Hobie Tiger, were you racing pretty much a stock boat back then?
Yeah, it was a stock boat. It was a stock boat. It was a lot easier back then because the stock boats were so quick. The sails were quick. The gear was quick. You know, like it was just, everything was just as we got it. Like we just would get a boat out of the factory into a box and then we would take it. It would have all the latest stuff on it, but it was just any person could just buy the same boat, put it together, and it was bang. It was the same, exactly the same. But it wasn't until NACRA brought out the infusion, like it was probably 2006. And before that, you know, the good old the Capricorn, when that came out, and it wasn't, we pretty much knew that the Capricorn was a faster boat than the Tiger. But luckily we had really good guys sailing the Tiger, and we had good sails as well, really good sails. But we knew that the Tiger perhaps was not as fast as the Capricorn. But when the infusion came out and Misha Hemskirk was sailing it, and, you know, I guess Gunnar and those sorts of guys, you know, sort of 2006, 2007. I mean, I had left Europe by then. But when that happened, you know, the infusion was a much faster boat than the Tiger. Yeah. And the way that they tweaked it, like, you know, it had, you know, just, you know, just it was more of a race boat, whereas the Tiger was more of a production boat. You know, we had stainless steel trapeze wires and, you know, all that sort of thing. Whereas the infusion, when that came out, you know, like, you know, the guys that were racing it really quickly, like Misha, they had, you know, was using Spectra, and, you know, the boards were higher aspect ratio and just better construction.
When did they go to the wing masts on the F-18?
Oh, well, you know, the Tiger, I mean, the Tiger mast is probably, you know, it's more wing mast, you would say, than a Hobie 16 mast. But the probably Goodall with the Capricorn, when they brought their mast out, it was the worlds that Darren and Glenn won, and Mitch was second and we were third. And, you know, the Goodall boat going upwind was properly fast, and we were all, you know, at the bar thinking, God, if they could just point that thing in the right direction, they'll win this regatta. But luckily, you know, they made lots of mistakes, and you know, the Tiger was 1, 2, 3 again. Yeah.
Now, so how are your kids? Are you gonna? You think you'll gravitate back to the 16 with sailing with your kids, or?
Yeah, I hope so. Yeah, I'd like to sail with my wife again on the 16, ultimately. But while our kids are young, I'm just concentrating on the F-18. But yeah, I would love the kids to sail. You know, Zara, our oldest girl, she's 7 this year. Gracie is turning 6 at the end of the year. So perhaps at the end of this year, we might, you know, do a bit of a sailing, you know, sailing school for them. I wouldn't mind buying them a little, like, 12-foot cat, and we're pretty lucky. We're pretty close to the beach here, so, you know, I could go out with them and just tootle around and sail with them just to get them on a boat. But yeah, I hope so.
Yeah, you've never talked Glenn into racing a 16, eh?
Yeah. He has briefly. It was a long time ago. No, we've never discussed it, to be honest. You know, like, it's funny enough watching Mitch and, you know, guys like him sail 16. I'm sure Gleno, you know, he'd probably have a crack if there was a world championship and he was invited and his kids were keen on sailing, or his missus. But, you know, Glenn has sailed, you know, with his wife on the F-18 on a Tiger. And I think that was probably Sasha and my inspiration to sail together. You know, we sailed together on the 16, probably because Glenn had sailed with Mel, you know. So
the thing that the thing, I mean, when I think back to all the guys that were really good on 16s and catamarans in particular, you always think of like tall, lean guys, like, you know, Brett Dryland was tall and lean, Ian Bashford, Rod Waterhouse, all these old names. But Glenn's like kind of an anomaly, like, you know, short guy. You know, it's got to be a bit of a disadvantage, you would think, you know.
No, well, you know, what if, you know, perhaps what Glenn lacks in height, he has in ability twofold, because you know, when you see Glenn, you know, ride a motorbike or windsurf or surf or, you know, anything he does, he has an amazing talent, and he makes up for his what would you call it? His vertical impairments by ability. Yeah.
So with you, do you think you're more natural, or, you know, like some guys train, sail, train? Do you think for you it's more of a natural innate ability, like you can, you know, show up and still be competitive, or?
No. Well, yeah. I think I don't know. I don't have. You know, how do I put this? I don't train as much as I would like, but I get tired of sailing from time to time. I don't think I have the natural ability, you know, of people like Darren or Mitch or Glenn. I don't think. But I enjoy sailing, and on my day, I think I can go all right. But
I mean, all those names you mentioned, and I know you had a stint as a pro, so you were basically a pro sailor. You know, those guys, I mean, were full-time pro and still are, but you seem to be able to make it work with, you know, just more an amateur approach to it.
Yeah. There's definitely that, and that's probably, I really enjoy sailing, but I need to take a step back from it from time to time, and I have done numerous times over the years. But I find as I get older, the more time I spend away from sailing, the more my body hurts, the harder it is to get back into it, and I find that if I just keep sailing, I'm better at it. My body doesn't hurt so much. And, you know, you probably speak to my wife and my kids, my mood's probably better as well because I'm sailing. So, and you know, I've got lots of friends in sailing, obviously, you know, and people that I respect and you know, keep in contact with, and it's given us plenty of opportunities. Like, you know, Corey and I, you know, when we sailed together in Europe, we still, you know, are really good friends, and we're in contact constantly. And, you know, I try and stay in contact with Glenn and obviously, you know, Mitchie in Europe, and then, you know, and Stevie obviously makes my sails, and Stevie and I, you know, we raced against each other a long time ago, Stevie Bruin.
Actually,
we raced against each other.
On that thought of Steve, he would probably be another good guy to have on, just talking about sail making for catamarans.
Yeah. Well, he obviously he makes all our sails for the F18.
Yeah.
And he makes A's and, you know, sails the A. He's got an F18 at the moment, so. But you know, Stevie, you know, you raced 16s a long time ago. That's when I met Stevie, you know, over east, and yeah, we've all remained friends.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, the other thing that comes up is it just seems like when you go to a Worlds on a 16, or you see the results more often, and you talk to some of the guys, you guys seem to have just a speed edge, like the top 10% guys, like there's 5 or 6 guys, like I know I was friends with Bob Merrick there, and he went and did a couple 16 worlds, and he just said you guys just had an edge in speed. And he trained pretty serious. He was an Olympic sailor. He did a lot of campaigning for I forget which worlds it was at. There's a couple of them anyways, and he just said you guys just have a speed edge.
Yeah. We've only got. I think the good guys have only got a speed edge when it's windy.
Yeah.
Because when it's light, anyone can make a boat go, especially a Hobie 16. Like, you know, in under 12 or 14 knots, anyone can make it go. And if they're lucky enough to get a good start and they go the right way, you know, that's why I think you find that the good guys really struggle. The really good guys don't struggle, but, you know, good guys struggle in under 12 or 14 knots, and that's when the scores start to get, you know, you have a good score and then a bad score and a good score and a bad score. But certainly on the 16, if it's over 15 knots, especially Australians and South Africans, we tend to be able to, well, I don't know, we sail the boats a lot in those conditions here.
Yeah.
And we're lucky enough that when the breeze gets that strength or the waves get and the boat handling gets hard, I think that's when you see the Australians and South Africans really start to come out in front. So that's why we all the time hoping for world championships in windy spots, because it just makes the racing easier.
Yeah.
But when it gets soft and you know, not trapezing or just single trapezing even, it's hard to stand out from just the average sailors, because they seem to be able to make the boats go in those conditions.
Yeah. And I think, unfortunately, in North America, you know, it typically the North Americans, which I've been to a few of, tend to favor those lighter to medium air conditions. Like, you know, a lot of the places, there's not really, they had an event in San Francisco one year, but you know, a lot of the places where they had, especially Florida, well, you sailed in Florida, like you've seen, like it can be, it tends to be more, you know, wind in the morning and then lumpy. You're dealing with a lot of lumpy stuff, you know. It's it's not that you know, and even on anything on the West Coast, when they go San Diego, that area tends to be same thing, you know, and I just don't think we get enough racing in that big wind type conditions, and it seems like anyways, because you look at from North America, there's really been nobody since Hobie Alter or Carlton Tucker, you know, those names. There's really been nobody that's really stood out. I mean, the Mark Moderman, but he came from South Africa, you know. So I mean, you know, I just don't think there's and a lot of guys, you know, just don't go out in the big wind stuff that much, I guess, is the other concern too, you know.
It seems I mean, it definitely is. It's just easier when it's windier, basically.
Yeah, because you guys, I know, and you tend to sail. You always sail pretty much one rudder all the time.
When it's windy, the new rudders on the boats, you know, the boats steer around the rudders a lot better, whereas the old rudders, you know, you would stall out if you pulled a rudder up and you had to steer really finite. If the conditions are really rough, I just leave it down. But if the course is long enough and you've got enough time and room to stretch the boat's legs, I lift a rudder up all the time in those conditions, purely because I just think the boat steers much nicer. It's just lighter on the helm.
It seems like we experiment with that, and you're right, it does. But you got to be very careful not to pinch it all, eh? It's
yes.
it'll definitely.
You can't do it like you you can do it off the start line if you get a really, really good start and you got clear air. I mean, I can kick the rudder up obviously from the trapeze. So if I get off the start line in a good spot, we get a good lane, I can kick the rudder up off the trapeze, and but I wouldn't recommend starting with one rudder up off the deck of the boat, and you have to do it, it has to be over 15 knots of wind, or you have to be comfortably double trapezing. If you go from double trapeze to not double trapeze, and then not trapezing at all, you'll have all sorts of problems where the rudder will stall out. You'll have to go in, and you'll have to be in and put the windward rudder down and all sorts of shit. So it's not the easiest thing to do. We used to do it a lot. I think because I watched Sean Ferry and those guys sailing 16s, South African guys, like in big waves at Guadeloupe at the Hobie 16 Worlds in Guadeloupe, and they were sailing around like with one rudder up, and just the boat so free, and it just like motoring upwind. And I think from that is where we really were like, wow, we should try sailing upwind with one rudder up. And once you've got your head around it and figure out what the boat's going to do, when the boat's going to do it, it makes the boat feel so much nicer.
The other thing I wanted to talk to you a little bit about, and I didn't get a chance, because I had a Puerto Rican guy crew for me one time at a North Americans, and I was amazed how much kinetics he put into the boat. Like he would be, especially downwind, like he would be on that front crossbar, like when we get on a wave, just banging that front crossbar and pulling the jib sheet, and it took a bit of getting used to, but it was pretty fast. It felt fast.
Well, I think at times it can be, but at other times it can be really distracting. And I might, if we're on top of a wave and we want to shoot down the wave, I might go, give the boat a bit of a nudge. But as far as like every wave, like I watch guys doing it at the 16 Worlds, and I think you're better off just concentrating on looking at the sails or looking at the wind and the waves and, going the right way than worrying about just making the boat go down a wave, every wave, to kinetically manhandle the boat around the course. I think you're much better off just keeping your head out of the boat and making it go the right way. And like I said, I've gone, at 16 Worlds, watching guys, ooch the boat all around the course, and 9 times out of 10 you beat them around the track and you don't have to do anything. So but there are gains to be had, don't get me wrong.
There was one learning experience I had, the North Americans we had in Kingston, Canada, and I got lucky enough one time to round the weather mark pretty close to Enrique Figueroa. He was just ahead of me. And he was constantly on the main sheet. Like it was never, like it was just in a little, out a little, in a little, out a little, like, I was just kind of watching him thinking like, because North Americans tend to sail downwind pretty static, like it's kind of cleat the main. They get fixated on that 90-degree bridle, the wind vane, and they just tend to steer all the time. Whereas he was incorporating a lot more coordination between his steering and sheeting. Is that something you do too, or?
Yeah. Like I just sailed with a guy the other day because Kai, he couldn't sail, so we had to. I had to get another guy to sail with, a regatta on the weekend. And he said, do you sail like this all the time? And I was like, this is normal. And it was, it's constant sheet, ease, trim, constantly. Yeah.
But even on your F18, even on your F18 downwind, like, are you still as active on your main sheet downwind on your F18?
The F18 on the Tornado, if you ease and trim the main sheet downwind, we found it was pretty quick. And if you really got to go deep on the F18, yeah, you do that.
You do,
But
eh?
if you're just sailing along, not much, but just enough to let the head twist off, and then just to bring the leech back in, like as the boat comes down, you bear away and then sheet on, and then when the hull sort of comes down the water, if you've got to round up a bit again, you just ease the main and the head twists off, boat flies a hull, and then you can sheet on and then just sort of carry the depth, and it just seems to work pretty well like that.